Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at Memorial Medical Center at the site of one of Michael Dunbar's sculptures. This is just one of many that are around the country and the world, and as you can see, Dunbar likes to deal with big sculptures. And as his sculptures go, this one isn't even particularly big. This is an important sculpture though for Michael. We're going to learn more about this sculpture, Michael Dunbar, and the process, Michael, of how you build these beautiful, beautiful things.
Thank you.
You've been doing this for many years.
Yes.
And
40.
For you, for 40 years, Smokestack Lightning
right.
is an important piece.
Very important piece. I was very fortunate. I had a fabulous studio out at the old Nichols Stone Yard, and worked out there for 12 years with Roscoe Nichols. Finished a huge piece for Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and Roscoe passed away, and the family decided that they wanted to use that facility for something else. And so I had to move out, and it was really a low point. Roscoe, I just loved the guy. He was such a wonderful mentor. To lose Roscoe was bad, but to lose the studio was really a double whammy.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Don and Evelyn Yurden came to the rescue and commissioned me to do this piece. Now the problem with the piece was that it went in their courtyard of their home, and we had to be able to get it through a regular doorway. And so the piece was built in pieces so that then it could be assembled on site in the courtyard and make it look like it had been there before the house was built. So this was a piece that I built in a 2-car garage over on Williams Boulevard. I'm surprised the neighbors didn't go crazy, because I'd be working at 2 o'clock in the morning.
all 24 hours
grinding,
a day,
grinding, and the screech of the grind.
Wow.
So the title of the piece makes reference to a famous musical piece, Smokestack Lightning, and it just was something that caught me, at the time. But I use music a lot to get into the creative mode, and so it's a really important piece.
Yeah. How long has it been here at Memorial Medical Center?
I think it's been here about 10 years now. When they sold their house and they moved, they donated it to the, and it's a beautiful setting. I couldn't be happier. It's elevated, and it's and it's in a confined
Can we take a look at the back of it?
Let's walk around.
What's the material again?
The material is Corten steel, and what's interesting about it is that it looks like it's solid chunks of steel, and that's by design, but in reality it's a series of welded boxes. And so I take a piece and another piece and then another piece and another piece, weld them together, grind them, polish them, so that when it's done, they actually look like they're cut out of solid steel. And
it's supposed to weather like this. You wanted this. You chose this material because you wanted it to look rusty.
There's no such thing as a maintenance-free anything, but this is about as close as it gets, because as it gets older, it gets it gets a surface glaze on it. It's almost like a glass glaze that prevents it from rusting any further, and so it's at its mature patina right now. And so
your Springfield studio is not very far from here.
Yes. And
at your studio, you have models and workups and ideas in all forms, and you're going to show us how you take it from a concept here to a finished product.
To this, to even bigger.
Terrific.
Yeah. Okay,
let's go over
there. Good.
Well, Michael, we made the move now from Memorial Medical Center and that beautiful piece over there to your studio, which is only like a mile away.
Right.
And you were talking about the fact that you lost your shop,
right?
And had to make arrangements. You found another shop, and then you moved on to having your fabrication work done elsewhere, which we'll cover all that today.
Right.
But in your studio here, what you do here is after you come up with a concept of what you think you want a sculpture to look like, then you actually start with, okay, I got to create this animal now, right? Okay.
I don't do drawings like as preliminary. I do drawings after the fact. So this drawing here is actually a drawing that is more of an architectural rendering to illustrate the piece after it was finished. But what I start out with is a very gestural kind of process where I use a lot of foam core. I used to use wax, but I'll just kind of be doodling, and I come up with something, and then you know, this is just an X-Acto blade, and I just, you know, I'll just make the cut, and, you know, and I'll just start out with shapes, and then start putting stuff together. And so, like this little guy here is the this is how this, I call them three-dimensional sketches. And so I'll start out with stuff like this, and I'll make variations on it, and then I start to figure out how does this, you know, how's this going to fit into the next piece, and maybe I'll throw a notch in here, you know, and then put, you know, go, okay, well, let's put something like that, and maybe put a notch in there, you know, and I just, you know, it's like playing. I mean, I'm actually having fun doing this.
So at this point, you're not trying to duplicate what's in your brain. You're
Not at
actually
all.
sort of thinking out loud as you go along here.
This is so much like improvisational jazz, and that's why I listen to improvisational jazz a lot. Is I'll just start, you know, kind of putzing around, and then that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Well, let's make it, you know, let's do a different joint, you know. Anyway, so I start out with that, and I just keep making parts, and then things just start to come together. And you know, it's the creative process, which is the hardest thing in the world to define, because nobody knows where the creative process really comes from. But it's your subconscious thoughts bringing in all these things that you've seen and observed and all the over time, and you just start putting it together until you come up with something like this. So then I will make a three-dimensional sketch. That's what this is called. It's a three-dimensional sketch. And if you look real close, you can see that the whole thing is pinned together.
I think I see toothpicks, don't I?
Well, something like that. But anyway, every one of those pieces will come off, and it's by design, and so that I can take that thing apart piece by piece and make my patterns, and then I'll blow that up, and then we make it into a bigger piece. And then, as you can see on this piece, there's little notations on the piece. That's where there's a joint there, and you know, there's a joint there. There's a joint in here. These are, you know, and then I take this over to my guy that I've been working with all these years, and he will take my patterns and he will cut them out of bronze, and then start fabricating them up. And then we have one over there I can show you.
So he uses this. This is exactly what you want. But you want it in the finished material, which would be bronze or steel or whatever you choose.
Exactly.
And he'll make a small one first. Is that right?
He makes this to
this same size.
Yeah,
okay.
Or bigger. And it's exactly the way I want it. And then that becomes the three-dimensional, what I call a three-dimensional blueprint for the monumental sculptures. And so we'll take that to the factory, and and they can take their piece apart piece by piece, and that way they can get every angle, every joint, every connection exactly the way I want it. I'm a fanatic about the precision.
You have to be.
Right.
Because you and I were discussing this earlier. You can't only be an artist when you're doing this. You have to be an engineer as well, because this thing has to be balanced. It's got to stand up forever.
Right. You don't want to be known as a sculptor whose piece fell over and killed all the grade school kids.
God. Yes.
I mean, that's really, and it has to not only survive the elements, the weather, you know, it has to survive an unsupervised public when you put it out into a public setting, because somebody's going to climb on this, you know, until the guards come out and say, hey, get off the piece. And if they fall and, you know, they hurt themselves, they're going to come back and say, that was a design flaw. And it's like, it wasn't a design, it was a spontaneous gestural sculpture that somebody, you know, foolishly was climbing on. But you can't be the guy that, you know, flattens, you know, the third graders.
Oh my goodness.
So, and it's, what happened was, I've been a sculptor since I was 3 years old. I've been making models and sculptures from that time. In 1970, well, but I got a master's degree in arts administration, and I spent a lot of time running a program for the state of Illinois, 33 years, where I went around and bought art for the state. during the day, and then at night I would go out to my studio at Roscoe Nichols Stoneyard, and I would weld and grind and make these things. And it was wonderful. It was a combination of, during the day you're dealing with long-term planning and all of the engineering issues that go into putting something up in a public space. And at night I'm out in the studio with a cutting torch and a grinder, and I'm cutting Buicks in half. Basically what it is, and having a ball. And and it really was almost therapy of working with just the bogged down, slow process of committee till you get to the thing. You go out there and fire up the torch and have a ball. I loved it. I was out there for I think about 12 years, and it was the perfect studio for a sculptor. I had overhead hoists that ran the length of the building, and we had a fork truck, and I could bring in tons of steel, and I did, and I'd cut it and torch, weld it, and have fun with it. Roscoe died right after I finished the biggest piece I'd ever done for Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And it was really a difficult time because his family decided that they wanted to do something else with that building. And so, as I mentioned, fortunately, the Yerdens commissioned me to do the piece at the hospital for their home. And so I had to find a 2-car garage where I could, work and make the transition. But in the process, I realized if I had to either decide, do I take my resources and try to replicate what I had out at Roscoe's, or do I go bigger? And I decided I was going to go bigger. And that's when I started working with fabricators. And it's not an easy transition.
And speaking of that, while we're talking about the process here, and we'll pick up your story a little later, but I want to go look at the next part of this process, when this goes off to your fabricator and you come back with this model. Can we go in there and look at that?
Sure.
Well, Michael, we get a good look at this now, and you can see, I think the camera could pick out that you've got all these pieces numbered and coded, so that you know how this goes together.
Exactly, and that's exactly what it is that when I send this over to the machine shop, you'll notice that it's G2, G3, B, all that. He will take this comes apart. The whole thing comes apart. And even though I've given him the patterns, he wants to make sure that he's got every angle just exactly the way they're supposed to be. And so then he'll set that out on his milling machine, and he'll mill out these pieces out of solid bronze.
This is bronze.
This is bronze.
And this is what the big one's going to be when it's created.
Right. If we're lucky, it's a financial situation. If the client can afford the bronze, we build it in bronze. If they can't, then we build it out of steel. But so then, as you can see, every one of these has a joint and a connection, and this comes apart. And when I take this to the factory, they will actually take this apart and put it together, and take it apart and put it together. And that's why it's built the way it is. So it's engineered to be dismantled and reassembled.
So the final product will be this reproduced like 32 times bigger, or whatever the scale is. You give them a scale
to this size here.
And this is the actual
piece. This is the actual piece. It was commissioned for the Sioux City Art Center in Sioux City, Iowa. And that's about a 16 or 18 foot tall piece. I can't remember.
Oh my goodness.
It's just tons and tons of bronze. And they come in parts, and then they get assembled. And the title is Touched by the Sun. It's from the song by Carly Simon about soldiers and sailors and artists who reach for the sun. And it's about the aspiration for greatness, to be doing your best. And so, as I mentioned, I listen to a lot of music when I'm building. It really puts me in the creative mode, in my mental state. And so, a lot of my, like Smokestack Lightning was, this jazz blues song. Sweet Melissa is a piece that's named after my daughter, but it's the Allman Brothers song. So there's a lot of musical references. But it also relates to the fact that I start out almost like an improvisational jazz, at the beginning of the whole process. And so there's a real strong relationship between the creative process for me and the creative process of starting out with the song and then going into the improvisational part of it.
Now this is bronze.
Right.
And
That's
this is bronze.
Bronze.
But look at the difference. Look
Right.
what weather does. Huh?
Well, that's the beauty. I love bronze because it's like a pair of blue jeans. The older it gets, the better it looks. That's exactly. It weathers so well. Like if we come over here and look at
take a look at
piece,
this.
This is the biggest piece I've built, and this is called Euclid's Cross, and this has to do with Euclidean geometry. And his cross was that he did not have the rapid transmission of information that we have today, and so he did what he was able to do 300 years before Christ, and was a brilliant thinker, but at the same time was hampered by the lack of technology. So this piece is bronze, and a perfect example of what I'm talking about, the patina that occurs because each environment has a different chemical makeup in the air.
And where is this now?
This is in Hamilton, Ohio, right outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. It's at the Pyramid Hill Sculpture Park. And this is 14 tons. It came in on semis, and we had to wait till the dead of winter to put it up because we had 2 cranes and a man lift and fork trucks and all kinds of
goodness.
stuff. And just so that we didn't get bogged down in the ground. And so it took a week just to set it up. It came together, and it just went together like a bridge. And so the crane would pick up one piece and the other crane would pick the other piece, and then it'd snick them together. And of course this goes back to the whole process that I use of the joints and the connectors and all that stuff. This is how I do what I do.
In your book, Michael, there's a picture of this. Now here it is, almost complete. But this does show you some of the process that you have to go through, and it's a very time-consuming and
elaborate.
And boy, you have to be everything has to be specifically just right, doesn't it?
Right. And that's, of course, that's the beauty of these, building it so that they can be taken apart and put back together, because they can get those joints exactly the way they're supposed to be, which, and I used to do this all myself, The biggest piece that I did was the one up at Stevens Point, which was about, I think 18 feet tall. In a building that's got a 11-foot lift, that's pretty challenging, but I built it in components, and then we never really fully assembled it until we got up to Stevens Point, and it went together the way it was supposed to. But it's a very labor-intense process. And what I found, it was sort of a fortuitous situation where I lost the studio because it forced me to go even bigger and work with factories that could do these things on a large scale. Because I found that once I learned how to do this, a lot of it was just day labor, welding and grinding. And and I learned how to do that very well. But while I'm welding and grinding, my head is thinking, well, what about that piece you want to build here? And it's like by the time you get home, that piece is gone. Well, now I stay with the spontaneity of, let's do that piece, let's try this, and so I've been more productive now that I started working with the factories, because they're doing the stuff that just takes forever to do, and I'm in the studio, creating new
exactly.
pieces.
If you were a songwriter, it'd be like by the time you got back to your studio, the song would be out of your head.
Exactly, and the similarity between the two is amazing.
While we're standing here in front of this beautiful piece of work here, describe this to me, because this is part of your future, isn't it?
Right.
You're working on a new series.
Right. This is out of the Relics from the Future series, and this was the signature piece from my show in New York, the solo exhibition that I had at Finley Gallery in New York, and it's the title of it is Skyrider, and it's about the fact that from the beginning of time, information has gone through the air, from smoke signals to drums to, and now we are at the point where the sky is the superhighway of communication. And so this is sort of like a symbol of that, phase. But if you've ever seen a 1984 Apple computer, we are moving so fast forward that everything that is current is going to be out of date in 10 years as opposed to 50 years. And so when I call it the Relics from the Future, these are pieces that I go out, 100 years and look back 50 years, and this is what we find, cast off on the side, So that's what the concept of it is. This is the third phase in my career. Started out, I was just overwhelmed with the power of the machinery of the industrialization of the prairie, and then the exploration of space became my second phase, and now we're into this, Relics from the Future series.
What I'd like to do next, if it's okay with you, I'd like to see some of the picture. You don't have the pieces, but the pictures from your New York show. And also some of the pieces that are around the world. I mean, you've got some in China, you've got some up at Notre Dame, you've got them all over the place. So let's take a look at some of those.
Okay.
Michael, we mentioned your one-man show in New York, and it's the pinnacle of most artists' career to have something like that happen.
Right.
Was it a thrill?
Oh. Well, I didn't tell you, but they put street pole banners up about the show on Madison Avenue, 5th Avenue, and 57th Street. When you're walking down the street and you see these, you think you're going to a rock concert, and
That's me.
That's me. I know that guy. How'd that get over there?
Wow. And this was called the Finley?
It's Finley Gallery.
Finley Galleries.
In New York, major gallery. And it's a solo show, and so you're right. I mean, that's what every artist is, shoots for. But, the funny thing about it, it's sort of like that Peggy Lee song, "Is that all there is to a, fire?" When, you do it, and everybody comes and they like it, and, and then it's over, and you just kind of go, wow, I just spent a year and a half getting ready for this.
Spent my whole life for this, and I feel like it. Oh, but this is one of the this is a model, right? Of one of the pieces that was in the show.
I call them machinist studies because I give them to the machinists. And you'll see this is kind of dinged up and it's scratched and everything else. That's because this just came back from the shop, and we have to take it in and refurbish it for display. But they took it apart, and then they made it 7 feet by 7 by 7. What's funny about this is the gallery is on the 7th floor on 5th Avenue. And they've got a standard elevator that's, maybe 5 by 5, And how do you get a 7 foot by 7 foot sculpture up on the 7th floor?
Yeah.
Well, the same way that I do, a monster piece, and that is that this thing comes apart. And so there were 18 pieces that came in, and it was assembled in the gallery on site. All 18 pieces, and then when we took it out, we had to reverse the whole process and take them down the end, which is really difficult because it's right across from Trump Tower, and just bringing a truck up there,
it's not that easy to access.
Not that easy in itself, But
hey, thank God for elevators.
Oh, yeah. Well, the guy that was doing it, his wife was claustrophobic, and she walked all 7 floors.
Oh my goodness.
She's in great
Got
shape.
her exercise, got her exercise.
But anyway, this piece is called Bel Canto in steel. And I had a friend who's of Italian heritage, and when she saw this machinist study series for the first time, she told me that she said, Michael, you have come, it's apparent you've come into your own with your work, and it's beautiful work. And in Italian, that would be Bel Canto, beautiful song. And so I named the piece Bel Canto.
Nice.
And so
Nice.
That's how that piece came to be. So this piece now is going to Roanoke, Virginia, to a building down there.
And it's 7 by 7 by 7.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Show us some more of the New York work.
This is a catalog. And these are the pieces that were, and they're bigger than this. These, I call them sort of super bronzes, but they're also from this Relics from the Future. So this is Shoot the Moon, and this was this is sort of like my mature body of work. And this is Rocket 88. This makes reference to, it's a musical reference. Rocket 88 is considered the first rock and roll song written and performed by Ike Turner back in the 50s, and it talks about the car, the Oldsmobile 88. The Buck's Embarkation, which is a celebration of the first day of the new year, and I had these marked. So this is a piece called Iron Mountain, and on this page you see, this is the machinist study. This is the intermediate size piece, and this is the piece that ended up going to China, and it won the top award at the Wuhu Sculpture Park, and it's there permanently.
And that's a bronze piece?
No, that's Corten steel.
Steel.
It was built in China, and it's 15 by 15, 15 by 20 by 14, something like that.
My goodness, it's huge.
Huge piece. Right?
And it's been there since 2016?
Yeah, it went in 2016. It's there permanently, and it's, you know, it's part of their, they're shooting for the world's largest sculpture park as a destination, tourist destination. So it's there and will be there forever. So, but so this is, you know, this is just sort of a series. This is one. This is, I get emotional
Learning
about
to
this.
fly. Oh, your dad was a pilot, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And when we were little kids, back in the 50s, early 50s, you know, they didn't have kid seats and all that stuff. He'd just strap us in the back of a Stearman, open cockpit Stearman biplane, and off we'd go. We lived out in California at the time, so we'd fly out to Catalina Island and then fly back. But he had to do it in such a way that, you know, we always could see land, you know, which made it a difficult trip. But anyway, and then I never got my pilot's license, but I loved the whole concept of, you know, the flight, and, you know, the fact that in 1903, you know, December 17th, we flew for the first time. Civilization had been around for thousands of years, but in 1903 we flew, and now we're sending, you know, things to Pluto.
Happen so fast.
To Pluto, you know, and back. And so this is all about the whole business of learning to fly, as, you know, as a cultural thing. And so, but my experience as well. So on my 50th birthday, a friend of mine had a restored open cockpit biplane, Stearman, and he took me out for the day, and we flew, and, you know, and it was wonderful. I just loved it. And we did low-level flying, which is what I love. And you look out, and you can see the shadow of the plane following the contours. You know, it's just, you know, I get all goofy.
Give you a
about
few ideas for the future.
Right. So anyway, so that's what this is, you know, and so I had about 12 or 13 of these pieces plus this piece in the show in New York, and that piece was built specifically for the show in New York, and so that's what how we're going.
Michael, thank you so much for
more than
showing
welcome.
us around your studio,
Good.
sharing your work with us. Thank you.
A lot of fun for me.
It really is. A lot of fun for us too. As we stand here today in Michael Dunbar's studio, he's waiting to find out about a major commission. He's a little nervous today. The pieces in New York, they're phasing out that show. There's still a few down in a show in Florida from his latest exhibit. And he says it's kind of feeling like giving birth to triplets after you have a show like that. And he's taking a little time off, but he's working on his next series. With another Illinois story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.